Have you ever wanted to work abroad? Join us this week as we talk to one of this year's Outstanding Young Alumni recipients and International Relations Officer, Hiram Ríos Hernández. All that and more coming up next. Hey Honors Bulls, welcome to the Honor Roll Podcast, the flagship podcast of the Judy Genshaft Honors College Podcast Network. I am your host, Fabiana Requena, a third-year student studying marketing and business analytics at the University of South Florida and a member of the Honors College. Today, my co-host is Sandra Napolitano, a third-year student studying criminology, deaf studies, and intelligence studies. Welcome to the podcast, Sandra.
It's so great to be here, Fabi.
Well, as always, we like to start off the podcast with one big question. So my question this week is, if you could speak any language, what would it be?
So technically, I wouldn't speak it, but I am currently learning American Sign Language just to be able to broaden my horizons because I want to work in public service, and international relations is on my radar. So being able to do multiple countries for especially the deaf population would be a great thing for me to do. What about you?
That's great, Sandra. For me, I think that I would want to sharpen up my French skills. I can understand some. I took it in high school, but I think really refining my skills, being able to speak it more fluently would be great. And actually, this week, our guest also uses multiple languages in his career as an international relations officer. So Hiram will talk to us about being recognized as a 2025 USF Outstanding Young Alumni and his time working in international relations. Coming up next.
Are you interested in graduate study, prestigious scholarships, studying abroad? Serving all 3 USF campuses, the Office of National Scholars, ONS, mentors USF students for prestigious awards and scholarship programs focused on research, international education, graduate study, and intellectual development. If you're interested in applying for awards like Fulbright, Rhodes, or Marshall, don't wait. Meet with an ONS advisor to discover what's possible. You can visit the ONS website or drop by their office on the second floor of the Judy Genshaft Honors College building to learn more.
Hi, Hiram. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Hiram Ríos Hernández. I'm an alum from 2015, alum of the Honors College, and I studied economics and international studies.
So you were recently recognized with a USF 2025 Outstanding Young Alumni Award for your achievements at the U.S. Embassy in Lima and a career member of the Foreign Service at the U.S. Department of State. But before we get into all of that, we wanted to talk a little bit about your USF honors experience. So as you said, you studied economics and international studies. What motivated you to attend USF in the first place?
That's a really good question. The thing is, I went to high school in Bloomingdale High School, which is in Brandon, Florida, not south of here. And we're also home of the Bulls. So it was almost natural for me to go from cheering on the Bulls at Bloomingdale High to cheering them on here on Fowler Avenue. So I think a lot of it just growing up and being surrounded by USF alumni, by USF students kind of drew me to the campus. And I think after I toured it and saw the great facilities, even though now they're even greater here at the Judy Genshaft Honor College, I just was kind of sold. I think just being close to home in the community. Yeah.
So since you studied economics and international studies, what sparked your passion for it? And was there a particular course of experience during your time here?
Yes. Okay, this is a crazy story, but bear with me and ride this wild ride with me. So I'm actually a concert violinist. I played the violin growing up forever, and that was my first passion and my first major at USF. I was studying music theory. And so what happened was when I was in high school at Bloomingdale, we got this crazy opportunity to go to Beijing and Shanghai and play violin at the Olympics. And I remember saying, hey, Mom, we have this great opportunity. Can I have $5,000 to go to Beijing and to Shanghai? And it sounded crazy, but I think that's where it all started. Because here I am, coming to Tampa from Puerto Rico. Never really, I've seen Orlando, that's it. I've never seen anything else in the U.S. or outside. And before you know it, I'm on a plane and I'm performing at the Forbidden City Concert Hall in Beijing at the Great Wall. We're doing exchanges in Shanghai. So that's kind of how it all started. That was my first exposure to anything outside the U.S. And then from there, I kind of kept drawing on those experiences. When I got to USF, my goal was I need to study abroad and I want to go back to China. And the way to do it was through language. So I started taking Mandarin And then the honors college, of course, they offer all sorts of study abroad opportunities, the Beyond the Classroom program. So I took advantage of Beyond the Classroom and went back to China on an exchange. So a lot of it, that's how it kind of got connected. But it wasn't a linear path. I mean, I think all these things are not a straight line. When I first started, I was studying music composition with a double major in mechanical engineering, and somehow, some way, I ended up in the foreign service. But I think a lot of that was a journey of self-discovery, of knowing kind of what I like, trying different things, and kind of giving myself, I guess, a platitude to, and giving myself the space to be open-minded, to take classes that have nothing to do with my major, and to meet people from different backgrounds.
Yeah, I completely understand. I was a band kid in high school, and I was very jealous of Bloomingdale because my school did not have that funding. But like I came in also wanting to do music, and then I switched my major 3 times. So like I understand the aspect of like let's take everything possible, which luckily the honors college is able to do. So like, what was your honors college experience like? And what do you think of the new building?
The new building is incredible. I mean, it makes me think back to my time at the honors college in the Allen building, and just, I mean, it's just incredible. It's just to see how far we've come. Because before, I mean, the honors college, like, we've always had really quality programs, great advisors, many of which are still here. We've always had the Office of National Scholars, which kind of helped me in my journey as well. But I think now having the facilities, it really just, I think, adds an extra level of gravitas. But my experience, it was great. You know, I think some of my closest friends are from the Honors College and from the Honors College Student Council, which I was a part of at the time. So shout out to the council. But I think my most meaningful experiences were the study abroad. I did 2 beyond the classroom experiences. One was Germany, where we went to the small town of Osnabrück in West Germany. That was my first time in Europe. So even though it was like a tiny town in the middle of nowhere that no one's heard of, to me, that was like, that opened my eyes, and we had so much fun trying to learn German, learning a lot about Goethe and some of like German literature. But sometimes it almost doesn't matter exactly like what the subject is really. It's just like allowing yourself to, to enter a space of kind of discomfort, leaving your comfort zone and putting yourself in new experiences. I mean, some of those friends I met in Germany in that exchange and beyond the classroom, like this must have been like 2013 or 2014, I still keep in touch with. And they visited me when I worked in China, and they visited me in the US and other places.
I really like that you mentioned that once you reach that threshold of the comfort zone, you're able to learn so much more about yourself and just in general, just have a greater understanding of things. So while you were also at USF, you received 4 nationally competitive awards: the Gilman Scholarship, the Boren Scholarship, the Critical Language Scholarship, and the Pickering Fellowship. Can you tell us a little bit about why you applied for those awards and how you think they prepared you for your future career?
Well, Fabiana, to be honest, I never saw myself applying for those scholarships. And so I think for anyone who's listening, like definitely put yourself out there and, research these opportunities and go for them. I mean, you said it in the name, right? These are nationally competitive scholarships. I mean, you're competing from people from the Ivy League, from all sorts of universities and colleges all over the country. And so when I first came across these opportunities, I remember telling myself, like, oh my gosh, that's not me, right? Like, I don't see myself applying for this or getting it. But I do kind of owe a lot to the Office of National Scholars and the director at the time, Dr. Linda Lucas and Miss Lauren Chambers, who they kind of saw me as a diamond in the rough. They knew that I had the potential, and they told me, Hiram, you should be applying for these scholarships. And at the time, I told them, like, no, this is not for me. This is for other students. And they kind of doubled down. And I mean, the first one I think was the most difficult. I think the Gilman, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I think for all these scholarships, you have to treat them almost like a class, right? You have to put in the same amount of time and effort that you would to any sort of kind of course that you're taking in the university. But it was really about figuring out, like, what is my theme song? What is my narrative? Like, I mean, not to like be all meta and philosophical and like kind of Moana. Like, who am I? But it was really, I was doing all sorts of different things. I was in Greek life. I was in a peer advisor leader, a PAL with the Office of New Student Connections. I was involved in every like nook and cranny around campus. So really what this first scholarship taught me, right, is that to write an effective, statement of purpose or statement of intent, personal statement, you have to know who you are and be able to not cherry pick, but really like tell your story and your narrative in a way that's cohesive and makes sense for the opportunity you're going for. And I think like once I figured out kind of who I was and how to tell that story in a way that made sense and that made that scholarship look like the next natural step in my career trajectory, I unlocked the key. Because from there, after Gilman, the Boren came through, and just for context, the Gilman, the Boren, and the critical language scholarships are all language scholarships. So this is all in connection to me learning Mandarin. And after I've had these 3 national scholarships, all for Chinese, and I was studying international studies and economics here, I was a shoo-in for the Pickering Fellowship. I mean, I didn't know at the time, because when I applied, USF had never had a finalist. Never in the history of this university had someone been accepted as a finalist for this fellowship, and no one had gotten it. So I was the first Pickering Fellow for all of USF ever. And that was like a huge burden to carry. I remember working with Dr. Solomon at the College of Arts and Sciences, with Lauren Chambers, with other Honors College advisors to do mock interviews. And honestly, like, that was so scary. Like, when I got to, I had to go to Washington in person for the interviews for the finals. And at the time, I just remember thinking, like, what a heavy burden to carry. I'm like, if I fail, then I feel like I'm disappointing, a school of, a university of 60,000 students. But at the same time, I thought, if I get this, like, this is going to be great, not just for myself, but for the prestige of this university. And what I did is, the night before that big Pickering interview in scary Washington, D.C., I took a walk down the memorial, I think it's the Lincoln Memorial, the reflection pool. And I just sat on the steps, and it was my first time in Washington. I just thought to myself, like, what an honor. Like, how amazing just to have made it this far. And if I go back to Tampa and I have to tell everybody at the Honors College, hey, I did my best, but I didn't make it. I'm like, just being among this cohort of 40 finalists and just being in this moment, it's worth it. And I think with that really calmed my nerves, because the next day, the day of the interview, I was very confident. I was at peace. I'm like, I'm happy. I'm like, I'm just proud of myself of making this far. And I think it was that confidence and that ease and lack of nerves that allowed me to be convincing, and for me to be compelling and to get the fellowship.
So you were speaking of your relationship with ONS, and while working for them, you were recognized as the USF Student Employee of the Year in 2013 and as a Stuart Silverman Endowed Scholar. What type of work did you do as a student employee at the Office of National Scholars, and how do these experiences support your academic or personal pursuits?
Yeah, so this is also kind of a crazy story. I mean, like, I'll be honest, like, when I started at USF, I was a commuter. My mom lives in Brandon. I was living at home for like the first semester, and very quickly I found out I did not want to take I-75 to school every day. And I had a couple of jobs. I have one on campus. I worked at IKEA for a while. I had a second job on campus and New Student Connections. And I was spending so much time on campus that my goal was to become independent and to just have my own place, my own car, and to live over here. So I really started working out of necessity. And the first job that I saw when I was looking for federal work study jobs, it was at ONS. And I don't know what ONS was. I don't know what a national scholarship was. I had no idea. To me, I'm like, this is just like a way to make ends meet. But I think, how is that connected to my academic career? Well, I mean, everything that I've accomplished, I think, has been because of my work at ONS. Because if I didn't work there, I would not have known that any of these scholarships exist, any of these fellowships exist. I didn't know there was funding for study abroad. I didn't know like how important that could be. All of these were kind of pipe dreams that I had, and I just really was serendipity. It was just luck to be there. It was interesting. Yeah, I was like the first like a student employee of the year. I guess I've done a few firsts for USF. And I think the reason I got that was because I was working, like I said, at 2 offices: National New Student Connections, NSC, in the Marshall Center, and also at ONS. And both of my employers had nominated me. So when the committee saw that I had nominations from the 2 offices I work for, I think it was a natural fit. But again, just very blessed and just grateful for all the support USF has always shown me.
I really agree that, working at these places, at these offices, really gives you a really good insight into a lot of the opportunities and networking. You're able to meet like a lot more people, a lot of really cool professors and students that are involved in really interesting things. So I do really agree that being involved in a lot of different things can open a lot of doors for you.
Hi, my name is Kate Ashmore. I am the Scholars Advisor at the Judy Genshaft Honors College here at the University of South Florida. The Wilcox Scholars Program is an opportunity for honors students who are interested in public policy, civic engagement, leadership, and community service. This program is open to students from all majors and begins at the end of your first year at USF. After completing your first year as a scholar, you'll be eligible for a scholarship to support an internship, fellowship, service opportunity, or similar activity. Go Bulls!
I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about your post-graduation life. So you worked as a consular officer in Shanghai, you worked as a public diplomacy officer in Burma, and you now serve as both international relations officer for the U.S. Embassy in Lima and the foreign service officer to the U.S. Department of State. You've been able to work in a lot of various places around the world. So could you tell us a little bit about how you prepared yourself to enter into these various roles?
I'll say one thing maybe. It's that you're never really prepared.
hmm
um, I think part of it, to me, it was, becoming a diplomat. It was like always natural because I'm from Puerto Rico. So just having moved to Tampa for middle school and high school, like that transition and having to learn a new language and adapt to a new culture, I had already done that in in my formative years. And so I've always been that bridge between like my family and my family. Some of my family members don't speak English or don't speak it very well. And so I feel like I've always played that role in my family. But I think the other way that I was prepared, and this is kind of where USF plays a big role, is that our community here is so international. I mean, you don't have to go too far to meet people from China or from India or from all over Latin and South America. That's already here on campus. And I remember thinking, I used to be very involved with them. There used to be like a Latin American Student Association. I think they're still around. And I thought like, this is just like one data point as to like how diverse USF is. You had LASA, CASA, LASA, like Latin American Student Association, CASA, Cuban American Student Association, DASA, Dominican American Student Association. I'll run out of breath, right? Like the list goes on. And I think that that's one thing, like we're so lucky here at USF because this is like it's like a mini bubble or mini, like a micro, think of the word right now.
Microcosm?
It's a microcosm of the world right here at USF without having to leave Tampa. So that really helped me. And for me, like I used to work at the Confucius Institute here as a student assistant. And that was like another connection to China, to Chinese language, Chinese culture.
So speaking of language, I'm sure that working internationally, and you're saying you studied Mandarin in college, can be really incredibly rewarding. So what is it like working in such different cultures, and what unique skills have you kind of picked up?
Well, I could sing karaoke in like at least 5 languages.
Go ahead.
Maybe more, yeah. I don't want to break people's ears. But yeah, I mean, the language thing is key. I think if you want to understand another culture and be effective working there, you have to speak the language. And it's not just about the languages, it's about the culture. It's not just translating what you want to say in English to Mandarin or to Burmese or to Spanish, but it's really understanding like what is the right thing to say in this situation, in this context. And I think that's where USF the World Languages program here is incredible. I'm pretty sure that the textbooks in the Mandarin program are called Communicating in the Culture. Because it's not about translation, it's about really understanding the environment. Now, for me, like I think the most rewarding thing, and it sounds silly, but I think it's not just about being able to read the news or take meetings in that language. There's nothing cooler than being able to like watch a foreign film without subtitles and understand what's going on and get the context. And also for me, I'm a lifelong musician playing violin and piano, being able to sing karaoke in Mandarin, like no joke, so fun. It's also the best way to network and to make friends. And in Burma, when I was in Rangoon or Yangon, the capital of Burma, Myanmar, we started a band at the embassy. And so we were essentially a Burmese rock cover band. I was the only American in there. It was all Burmese staff at the embassy. And it opened up a whole new genre of music. And that's a really special, connection that I have and experience that would not have been possible if I didn't, spend a year locked down in Washington learning Burmese.
You're talking about your time in Burma, which when you were there, it was kind of a conflicting time for them. How has your perception of international affairs and public policy transformed during your time working in the field, especially in Burma? And like what challenges have come with working in a rapidly evolving environment?
There's many challenges. I mean, I think when you're studying international studies here or foreign affairs, it seems like, a textbook will divide the world into, very black and white terms, or there'll be like one framework that explains everything. But as we've seen in just the last few years ago, there's so many armed conflicts that we thought were kind of things of the last century that are coming back. And there's like a new realignment, right? It's not just like you can't divide the world into autocracy and democracy. But I think for me, what I learned in Burma and again, having lived there during a military coup, a civil war, was that diplomacy is not just, it's not just receptions and writing papers and going to the MFA for meetings and fancy black tie events. Sure, that's part of it. Maybe like 0.001% of the time you're in a black tie event, but some of it could be quite scary. But I think some of the work that we're doing in places that are in active conflict, like that's some of the most important work that we're doing, not just to safeguard and advance U.S. interests, but also to uphold our values, democracy, liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of information. So, I mean, I think my perspective has changed quite a bit. I think maybe I was a bit more naive. I still consider myself an eternal optimist, but I think having lived in a place that has seen so much conflict and it's going through so many changes, I think make me, I don't know, how to describe this, but I don't know. I guess I have a more real perspective of how things are, and maybe I would say that um, all these things are interconnected. If there's conflict in the Middle East, that also affects our relations with Latin American countries, and if there's trade barriers or trade tensions with countries in East Asia, that also impacts how we do policy in Europe or with the EU. And I think like that's my advice to anyone who's studying international studies. Even if you're focused on a single country or a language or region, you have to be aware of everything that's going on in the world, because all these things come together into like a big jigsaw puzzle.
So I also wanted to ask about your current position in Lima. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah, I'm an economic officer at the U.S. Embassy in Lima. In the econ section, a lot of what we do is help promote U.S. investment, help promote economic ties between the United States and Peru. I have a pretty cool job because it's regional. So I cover Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Guyana, and Suriname. So I get to hop around the region. And in my role, I'm really more, doing capacity building, like training our officers, supporting our different missions. But I think one of the events I'm most proud of was last year. We held the inaugural AI Summit, the Artificial Intelligence Summit in Lima. We brought together, like, I think 14 experts from 7 different countries. We brought like the head for Latin America of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. We brought together the heads of Amazon Web Services, different Google, Microsoft, all the heads for Latin America and the Caribbean came together in Lima for this for this 2-day summit. And we were able to kind of push US solutions and US tech offerings in the AI space. And that was, I think, also a big challenge, because it's not just the logistics of putting on the event, it's the networking to get to know the who's who of the tech world in the region, convince them to attend the event, to get the right folks from Latin America in the audience. That's your target audience. And then also, I mean, of course, just AI being so hot and being so trendy these days. Once word got out, there was media all over the event. So I was being pulled in and out of the event to do interviews. Sometimes it was like live TV. Like, we're going live in 5 minutes. Can you comment on behalf of the embassy? So I feel like this event brought together all my skills. From being the deputy spokesperson in Burma to being an economic officer in Lima. I'm bringing in all my skills and I'm doing interviews in Spanish, in English, managing high-level speakers. I think it really was a testament to kind of how far I've come in the foreign service, but also of our mission, right? Making America more prosperous.
So you're around a lot of really prominent figures. You're in the public spotlight. What would you say to students that also want to work in this environment and kind of working on their public speaking or just being more well-spoken?
I would say take a leadership position on campus, and that could look, that could look in a variety of different ways. I think for me, I used to be the vice president of the USF ambassadors. So shout out to the Alumni Association and the ambassadors. I'm a big fan of the program. But being a USF ambassador, like, completely prepared me to be a US diplomat. Because as an ambassador, you're at all sorts of events with donors, with media, with kind of like the who's who of Tampa Bay and beyond, maybe Florida to some extent. And it teaches you poise. It teaches you how to speak truth to power, how to be comfortable in some of these kind of, I guess, anxiety-inducing spaces at times. And I think when I joined the Foreign Service, I already had that experience. I had been doing that already for years at USF. And similarly, when I was a peer advisor leader with New Student Connections, we had this little skit that we would do during orientation, and you had to perform it in front of every orientation class. So, I mean, I don't even want to think back about like it's just so cringeworthy. But it was really important content. I mean, I say cringeworthy in the sense that it was really nerve-wracking to be like a sophomore and to go on stage in front of 600 new students twice a week for like 14 weeks or however many weeks it was. So I feel like here there's many opportunities to get in front of a podium, get in front of a mic, and speak your truth to a group of students or faculty or more. And my advice to students is to do that, right? Like if you're nervous about public speaking, practice. Practice makes perfect and gets easier.
So we've talked a lot about like the different positions that you've had across the globe. How does it feel to pack up your entire life multiple times and continue moving in the foreign service?
I'm gonna quote the Grammy Award winner, Grammy Award winning singer Sam Smith, and say that I'm way too good at goodbyes. I think the first tour was really difficult. I think moving from Washington to Shanghai, even though I'd been to Shanghai before, I studied abroad in China, I think there's something like almost like psychological about packing up everything and moving there. And the foreign service is not like I like to travel. There's a difference between going on a 1-week holiday or a 1-month exchange to like living in a country for 2-3 years. And I think in the first post, it was a little bit difficult. By the second post, it got a little bit easier. And now that I'm finishing my third mission, I feel like I'm a pro. And I'm a pro because I don't feel like I'm closing chapters. You're not cutting ties with all those people and with all your friends and contacts. There's a saying in Mandarin, when you say goodbye in Mandarin, it doesn't translate to goodbye. It translates to see you again. And this is what it's been like. I mean, my best friends are diplomats from the UK, from Australia, from Turkey, from different places, from Japan. And some way or another, we always cross paths. And, whether in Europe or in Latin America or Asia. And nowadays, it's so easy to stay connected, between social media and WhatsApp and all these different platforms. But I do think I would say that the only issue is, for the foreign service, like if you want to have a family, if you want to have kids, get married, like that's, I think, a huge obstacle because that calculation is not just like your career ambitions, but it's also like, what do you want for your family? So that could be kind of a challenge.
It's great that you've been able to stay so connected with so many different people throughout your posts, and you've been able to stay really connected with USF as well. You just received the Outstanding Young Alumni Award. So what was it like being honored at such a young age with a prestigious award, and what did receiving the award mean to you?
Oh my gosh, it means so much. 10 years ago when I graduated in 2015, I was named Outstanding Graduate. I was named Outstanding Graduate. And I felt like that award, well, first, that was a huge honor because I looked at, who had been nominated for that. And it was a lot of people that I looked up to on campus that I admired. And I was shocked, honestly, when I got it. But I bring that award up because that was an award based on potential. They looked at my impact on campus and the committee that decided kind of felt like I had a great future ahead and I had, a lot of potential. But now, 10 years later, it's not about potential anymore. This is like about what I've been able to accomplish. And I think it feels like it's a great honor. But to me, it's also this is a reflection of my education here. If it wasn't for the support I received at USF, if it wasn't for the connections, if it wasn't for the study abroad opportunities, this is 100% a testament to the power of a USF degree and the power of the Honors College. But to me, I just feel humbled because just listening to the panel and all of my other fellow recipients, folks who've like Shelley, who was an advisor in the Obama administration, another colleague who's a surgeon. These are folks who've had great impacts in their field, and to me, it's just really humbling to be able to do that in foreign affairs.
Well, we are so glad that you're able to join us on the podcast. I want to wrap up with one last question. You've had many interesting experiences and lived in many different environments, but what is next for you?
So next, I'll be going to Bangkok, Thailand, and I'll have a similar regional role working in the economic section, but covering Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Thailand. So I'm excited to go back to East Asia. I've always kind of loved the region, and Lima, Peru is incredible. Probably the best food I've ever had.
True.
I'm hoping to not gain any more weight while I'm in Lima. But yeah, really excited to go back to Thailand. I think one thing for me, and everyone does the foreign service in a different way. But being from Puerto Rico, I've always felt very comfortable in Latin America. And as I mentioned earlier, I think going to that zone of, going outside of your comfort zone is how you grow. And that's how you kind of challenge yourself and get to the next step. And I'm excited to go back to East Asia and to go to a new country, learn a new language, and go on a new adventure. So, I mean, maybe if we do this interview again 10 years, let's see how many new languages I pick up along the way.
We'd certainly love to have you back. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Hiram.
Thank you both.
We are back in the studio. Fabi, what did you think?
I absolutely loved today's podcast. I think it was really insightful to have Hiram here as an alumni back at USF, talking about all of his experiences working internationally. That's something that I want to do, not necessarily in public service, but in business and in marketing. I think it's really inspiring to see how much networking you can do while at college and then post-graduation. So it was really nice to have him on.
Yeah, as someone who's interested in public policy and international relations, it was so cool being able to see an actual perspective and being able to see all the skills he was able to build and all the things that he was able to focus on in undergraduate.
Yeah, without a doubt, Sandra. And if you're interested in opportunities like Hiram had, don't forget to check the Honor Roll newsletter and our website at usf.edu/honors for all upcoming events, updates, and news. That'll do it for this week's episode. The Honor Roll podcast is recorded in the Judy Genshaft Honors College at the University of South Florida Tampa campus. Production assistance is provided by honor student Sandra Napolitano. Thank you all so much for listening, and please do not forget to rate and review our podcast as we really appreciate your feedback. Please join us next week to hear what we're up to at the Judy Genshaft Honors College. Until next time, go Bulls!